to today's live demonstration, NetSuite for Software, Cloud, and Internet Companies. My name is Kimberly Odom, Director of Software Industry Marketing at NetSuite, and I'm joined by Joe Friedman from our Solution Consulting team. Thank you for joining our webinar where we will showcase the benefits that NetSuite provides to high-tech companies like yours. For those of you that may not be familiar with NetSuite, we've experienced dramatic and consistent growth since our founding. That led up to our initial public offering many years ago and continues to this day. For 4 years in a row, we've been named the fastest growing financial management solution by Gartner, and we've been recognized time and time again for having the leading solution in the market through multiple awards, including the Coty Award for Best Financial Management Solution. We are the largest public SaaS company providing an integrated business management solution. We operate around the globe with more than 3,000 employees and generated over $500 million in annual revenue in 2014. But the most important thing is that over 24,000 organizations trust NetSuite to run their mission-critical business operations. The high-tech industry is more exciting than ever as business models continue to evolve and have a dramatic impact on the landscape. But these changes also give rise to a set of challenges that high-tech companies must face. Revenue streams come from multiple sources today: perpetual licenses, subscriptions, usage, professional services, and support. All of these revenue streams must be managed efficiently. The software industry also has very complex revenue recognition requirements that are continuing to evolve. Often, companies resort to using ginormous spreadsheets to manage revenue recognition, and that's an extremely time-consuming process that is also highly prone to error. You have to stay focused on growing the business while at the same time maximize the opportunities you have to upsell and resell and renew your existing customers. You might also be looking ahead to international expansion, a new round of funding, or possibly an IPO is on your long-term horizon. Regardless of how big your company is today, NetSuite solution is uniquely designed to provide you with a solid foundation you need to move your business forward. So I want to talk a little bit about NetSuite's commitment to software, cloud, and internet companies. Our track record of success within this industry is a direct result of the large team of NetSuite professionals that are dedicated to the success of companies like yours. Across all areas of the organization, sales, solution consulting, professional services, and product management, you'll be working with individuals who have experience working exclusively with our software industry customers. That experience continues post-implementation through our account management teams and support personnel who are also dedicated to software customer success. Our own experience as a rapidly growing software company continues to inform our product strategy, and our solutions have purpose-built functionality designed to alleviate the key pain points that tech companies experience. NetSuite runs on NetSuite. That's something you'll hear from us, and companies like you can benefit from our experience as we share our own internal best practices with our customers. The combination of dedicated industry experts and a deep industry-specific product set is the reason NetSuite is the #1 choice for modern high-tech companies. And speaking of modern high-tech companies, our track record of success with hyper-growth companies is simply unmatched. Over half of the 2014 JMP Securities Hot 100 privately held software companies run on NetSuite. The vast majority of Bessemer's next cloud unicorns, as well as the Wall Street Journal's Billion-Dollar Startup Club, also run on NetSuite. And when it comes to taking your company public, no one comes close to matching NetSuite's expertise in helping software companies achieve this critical milestone. Net-net, no matter what stage your business is in today, NetSuite is the financials management and ERP solution that will meet your existing needs while future-proofing your business for the challenges that lie ahead. And with that brief introduction, I'm pleased to move us into the demonstration portion of today's webinar. And it's my pleasure to turn this over to Joe Friedman, our software vertical market expert.
Thanks, Kim. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my desktop. Great. So thanks. So, As Kim said, my name is Joe Friedman, and I'm the vertical market expert for the software vertical at NetSuite, which is really a fancy way of saying I'm the lead solution consultant for the software vertical team. I come from an accounting background before joining NetSuite, and in the nearly 3 years I've been here, I've worked in some capacity with over 100 software companies, from high-growth startups coming off QuickBooks to enterprise organizations replacing Oracle or SAP. So looking at our agenda today, I want to make the point that, typically if you were to engage with the sales team at NetSuite, I would spend several hours with you really understanding your current business pains and business requirements, and then tailoring a demo specific to your company's needs that could last anywhere from 2 to 8 hours or possibly even multiple days. Obviously, we don't have that luxury today. So for the agenda, I want to get everybody familiar with the product first. So we're going to do an overview. We're going to talk about roles and navigating the system. We're going to talk about dashboards and reporting, and just some of the overall benefits that you're going to get from the NetSuite architecture. And then we're going to move into two areas that we see companies really focusing on when they're evaluating NetSuite, whether they're a new company that's looking to scale and to grow, or a mature company that's looking to come off their legacy ERP and streamline their operations. So we're going to talk about the lead to cash process, everything including Salesforce automation, order management, billing, revenue recognition, as well as reporting, and contract and renewals management. You'll notice that reporting is a topic that comes up in all three sections. I'd like to, tie all the processes that we're going to go through to the reports. And then global financial and accounting management. So, NetSuite's global functionality is really unparalleled. We're going to talk about multi-subsidiary and multi-company management, multi-currency management, consolidated reporting, as well as the general GL setup, and some things around journal entries and cost amortization, et cetera. Okay? So that's what we're going to cover today, but I just want to point out that NetSuite's a highly flexible, highly configurable, and highly scalable end-to-end ERP system deployed through the Internet. And we have a ton of great functionality baked into the core of the product, as well as a platform application layer open APIs that allows you to extend the functionality via workflow, suite script, partner products, or integrations. This is how we can meet the needs of software companies of all shapes and sizes, as you saw on the logo slide that Kim just showed. So many software companies, for instance, have embedded professional services organizations, and you'll see that NetSuite has a really great project management solution that allows you to manage your projects, your resources, that's fully integrated with AR and revenue recognition in the GL. We have a lot of software companies that have inventory requirements or manufacturing requirements, and we've got a lot of great functionality there, as well as things around purchasing and e-commerce. So obviously I can't cover all of these topics today as much as I would like to, and so hopefully over the next 70 minutes or so, I can really pique your interest enough that will you're going to want to come engage with NetSuite directly, and we can do a full evaluation and hopefully show you how NetSuite can bring immediate value to your company. So that being said, let's get started with the overview portion of the demo. So you should all be seeing my screen, and Kim, please let me know if you can't. But what you're looking at right now is the home dashboard of sort of our global controller or global finance power user. NetSuite, as I hover my mouse here, you're going to see I've got a bunch of different roles kind of down here, and I'm not going to be jumping between too many roles today in the interest of time. But the point I do want to get across is NetSuite is a role-based system. Everything in NetSuite is based around a role a user is assigned, and then whatever permissions or restrictions are assigned to that role. So we can view certain records or create records or delete records. Every user and every role has its own permissions or restrictions, which really allows us to use workflow for segregation of duties, etc. So that being said, that's really the crux of what we're looking at when we're talking about NetSuite. Another couple things I wanted to point out. We are a pure internet cloud application. I am on a Mac today using Chrome, but you could use a PC, Firefox, Internet Explorer. It really doesn't matter. We've got a great iPhone application, a Droid application, but as long as you can connect to the Internet, you can be using NetSuite. And you just log in through a normal login page, put in your email address and your password, and you'll come to your home dashboard, which is what you're seeing on my screen. And one last thing, we are 128-bit encrypted, which is the same level of security that the financial institutions use, and we outline all of our database architecture and security specifications in our SOC 1 document. Okay, so moving on, as I mentioned, you're always going to come to your home dashboard when you log in, and we're going to talk about dashboards in just a second. But before we dig into that, I really just want to talk about navigating the system. That way, you're more familiar with how I'm going to be moving around the system later. But really, one of the biggest values that NetSuite's going to give you, as soon as it's turned on, is the ease of which you're going to be able to go about your day-to-day business. So from a basic, primitive way of navigating, we have drop-down navigation, and it's very intuitive. So if I go to customers, sales, enter sales orders, I can create a new sales orders. If I go to accounts receivable, issue customer refund, or accept customer payments, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I could go to reports, revenue, and see all of my revenue reports. We have over 200 standard reports out of the box. So drop-down navigation is really the most basic way to navigate the system, sort of if all the other cool things I'm going to show you fails. But again, you're not going to see me using drop-down navigation at all today because we have a lot of great tools to to help you navigate the system much easier. So a couple of things I wanted to point out is shortcuts. So shortcuts are essentially bookmarks. You all use the internet. I'm sure you've all bookmarked your favorite pages that you access a lot, maybe your bank accounts or your email address. Well, in NetSuite, every single page has a unique URL, and it can be bookmarked right here on your dashboard, whether that's an income statement or a report, and this is broken out by department. We could break this out by subsidiary and view a consolidated income statement of the entire company. Whether it's whether it's an entry screen, like a journal entry that I make a lot of journal entries, so I want to have a new journal entry in my shortcuts, or even a list of records like workflows. I can bookmark these pages that I access often and have them easily accessible on my dashboard. Now, I always say you're going to use your shortcuts to sort of manage your day-to-day activities. I use my shortcuts really to manage my demo flow so I can demo more functionality more efficiently and quickly. Now, before we move on sort of navigation, I wanted to just point out while we're on the workflow tab that workflow, we'll refer to it a lot today, but it can't be stressed enough how flexible our workflow engine is and how configurable this is to really help you build out your own tailored business process in NetSuite, whether it's a purchase approval workflow, three-way vendor match is what we're looking at right now, or a collections workflow for overdue invoices. Workflow can be deployed throughout your system to help you manage your internal controls, segregation of duties, etc. So I know that wasn't really about navigation, but while I was on the screen, I just wanted to show you the workflow engine really quickly. So another thing that I wanted to point out, which you'll see me doing a lot today, is the ability to open things in a new tab or a new window. Again, inherent internet functionality, but because NetSuite is such a dynamic system, because you can keep drilling and drilling down through reports and drilling down from the dashboards, being able to open things in a new tab or a new window is extremely helpful because you can look at multiple screens at the same time and pull things out into different monitors, etc. So you'll see me using these features a lot today. So shortcuts. Also, recent records. We are tracking everything you're doing in NetSuite. And if you're, clicking through the system and clicking on records and you want to quickly access something that you just accessed, you've got your last 10 recent records right here. Or I could open a page of all my recent records. I can see exactly when I accessed them last, and I can open up any of those recent records directly from this list. And then lastly, the other little tool that I wanted to show you from a navigation perspective is global search. We call this everybody at NetSuite's best friend. I can type a word in there, and it's like Google. I'll pull up every instance of Ultima technology in the system, and I can, of course, open this up and show more results for Ultima. Or I could use prefixes and wildcards. So if I type CU Ultima, I'm going to come right to the customer record for Ultima. If I type a number in here, like 2516, I'm going to come right to the sales order for sales order number 2516, or I could type pound ACOM and come right to any records for ACOM Business Solutions. So the thing about NetSuite is all of your data resides in one unified database across sales, finance, projects, whatever it may be, and all that data is accessible through the global search so long as you have the permission to access that data. So That's really what I wanted to cover as far as, navigation, basically, drop-down navigations, recent records, shortcuts, and global search. And then really the other way that you're going to spend most of your time navigating NetSuite is dynamically through your dashboards or dynamically through reports. So moving down to the home dashboard, you're going to see a bunch of really cool things on this dashboard. One thing to mention, everything in NetSuite is real time. So as the global controller, I'm viewing everything in a consolidated view on my dashboard. And if somebody posts an expense transaction or sales transaction in a specific subsidiary, it's going to post to the GL in real time. It's going to be reflected in any of my reports or any of my dashboard metrics in real time. NetSuite's also extremely dynamic, and I'm going to drill this point home, but every time you see my mouse go to a cursor, it means I can drill into the underlying data, and I can keep drilling to any related records to that data, as long as I want to. I can keep drilling and never stop. So very flexible, very dynamic. So as far as the dashboards are concerned, these are all configurable by you. Everything in NetSuite is configurable by you, from the colors, from the look to the look and feel, from the order that things are sitting around on your screen, from the forms that I show you today. It's very easy to rearrange fields. It's very easy to create new fields, and it's very easy to configure the system. If I want to remove something from my dashboard, I can very easily remove it. If I want to add something to my dashboard, I can simply go to Personalize Dashboard, add back the portal that I just removed, and put it wherever I want. Notice the data inside that portlet did not go away. It's still there even though I wasn't displaying it. Now, best practice when you come onto NetSuite is we're going to help you define standard roles, and we're going to give you standard dashboards or help you develop standard dashboards to publish to your employees. Typically, companies like to lock down the dashboard so that new employees don't have the ability to really mess them up or hide things that you want them to see. And then as they get used to NetSuite, they give them more permissions to configure it. So NetSuite is as configurable or as locked down as you want it to be. Now, talking about some of the things that we're looking at on the dashboard. First, I just want to highlight the new release portlet. We have a big release coming up, 2015.1, but we have two major releases each year, one that comes in the February-March timeframe, one that comes in the August-September timeframe, and you are always on the best and greatest, most recent version of NetSuite. We have a lot of great functionality being released, including our Suite GL, which is really just an expansion of our GL functionality, giving you things like custom transaction types and custom GL impacts, a lot of great things. So, we always have new functionality coming out. We talk to our customers. We have a customer advisory board, and we want to make NetSuite the best possible ERP system in the world. So that being said, I'm going to hide that and talk about some of the specific things that we're looking at on the dashboard. So in the top right-hand corner, I want to point out reminders. So reminders are going to really serve two purposes. They are going to tell you when you need to do something and allow you to do it. So if I see I have two expense reports to approve, and email notifications can also be tied to these reminders, I'm going to be able to drill down to a page that allows me to come in and just mark all and approve these expenses. Now, we have full expense automation capability. We also have a pre-built integration with Concur if you're using Concur. So if you don't have expense reports or you're using Concur, don't worry about that. The purpose here is I can come in and approve these, or I could drill into any of these transactions and see more about it before I approve. So in the case of an expense report, I'm down at the expense report level right now, and I can actually see at the line level I have receipts attached to this expense report. So in 1, 2, 3 clicks from a high-level reminder, I'm already at PDF-level backup for this expense report. And we can attach files to any single record type in NetSuite, be it a purchase transaction, a customer record like an SSA agreement, or receipts on expense report. Every single page that you're going to see in NetSuite today can have PDF documents attached for it. So that's really using reminders to tell you when you have something to do, and then you allow you to have all the information at your fingertips to go do it, and you could approve or reject this expense report. Another thing that reminders really help you to do is manage your business. So as the global controller, I might never be the one who's collecting on overdue invoices. But maybe I want the system to tell me whenever we have overdue invoices over $500,000, or if we have overdue invoices greater than $500,000 from a certain level of customer or a certain value of customer. Well, these reminders are highly configurable to your specific business needs, and I can drill in, see a dynamic list of all of my overdue invoices and information from those invoices, and then I can drive down to the transaction level detail. So again, we started at a high level reminder. We see all of our overdue invoices, and now we're actually on the invoice itself. Now, when we're talking about the invoice, I can do a lot of other great things from here. So one, I can go to the Activities tab. So a lot of you, I'm sure, are using Salesforce, and we're not going to try to take you off Salesforce. But NetSuite still has a CRM built into the system. So every transaction or every customer record has an Activities tab, and I can view any automated emails that have been sent out through a collections, a Dunning letter workflow like we're seeing over here. I could come in here and I could see if my collections team has been creating phone calls or tasks. I could even schedule a phone call or a task for somebody else in the company, basically telling him, hey, this is a big invoice overdue, and I need you to follow up on it. I could schedule this task for that person, and they will get a reminder on their dashboard that they've got a overdue invoice to follow up, and that the global controller has scheduled a phone call for them. So, using reminders as from a managerial perspective, being able to drill down to the detail and even create activities for your collection staff if you wanted to is something that you're just not going to see in most ERP systems. Another point I wanted to point out is the audit trail. So every record in NetSuite has an audit trail that time and date stamps every change to any field on that record. So you can see when fields are set for the first time, all of the new values that are updated are posted. If any of these fields are changed, it's going to say who changed it, when they changed it, what the old value was, and what the new value is. So Audit Trail runs on every single record in NetSuite, and it's searchable. And you can have error logs running off of it and all sorts of different notifications running off the Audit Trail. You're also going to see the Workflow tab. So in this case, we have an invoice collection workflow running off of our overdue invoices, and you can see that all of the workflow history is tracked right on the record type as well. So, one of the main reasons that companies come to NetSuite is because they're looking to go public, and they need to be compliant with SOX. And, between our audit trail, our workflows, and, being able to attach paper, PDF documents to the right transactions, we have a really auditable system to help you not only cut costs on your audit, but really save time of your own employees and opportunity costs of spending time with the auditors, because everything's right here in the system. So that's really what I wanted to show you about reminders. I also wanted to point out that what you're looking at with this list is a concept called a saved search. So we can create, as a customer, you can create as many saved searches as you want, and you can use them as reminders. You can use as custom key performance indicators, which we're going to talk about. But basically, we create a search where we're searching the database for certain criteria. In this case, we're searching the database for invoices greater than $500,000 with a due date before 60 days ago, and the amount remaining is greater than zero. So that's basically overdue invoices over $500,000 that are 60 days old. And what we want the system to do when it finds those invoices is bring me back the name of the customer, the date of the invoice number, the due date, the amount paid, and the amount remaining. We can also have email notifications sent out to users based off of something falls in or out of that criteria. And that's exactly what you're seeing when you look at this reminder. You're seeing the name, the invoice date, the invoice number, the due date, the amount paid, and the amount due. And if any of these invoices get paid, they're going to fall out of this list in real time, and my reminder is going to be updated in real time. Or if a new invoice hits that 60th day, it's going to be added to this list in real time, and my reminder is going to update in real time. So that's sort of a little bit about reminders and a little bit about saved searches. I'm going to be referring to saved searches a lot through this presentation. Moving to the left side of the screen, we have what we call key performance indicators. So key performance indicators are metrics that you can compare across time periods. We have well over 100 key performance indicators out of the box, and then we allow you to create as many key performance indicators as you want. You'll notice that some of these key performance indicators have these little squiggly lines here, and that means you can pop open to trend graph. You can change the view of that trend graph. I can change the period, and I could even pop this out into an image file. So we have lots of great graphs and reports that you can post on your dashboard, but if you don't want to take up your whole dashboard space with graphs and reports, every time you can see a squiggly line, that means you can pop open that particular graph or report. So that's key performance indicators. Moving to the center screen here, we have what's called a key performance indicator scorecard. So whereas KPIs allow you to take single metrics across time periods, key performance indicator scorecards allow you to take single metrics and compare them across multiple time periods. It also allows you to take metrics and apply them against each other in a formulaic fashion. So if we're looking at sales and marketing efficiency, that's taken by taking our sales and marketing expense divided by our bookings. And each of these metrics will be updated in real time if a expense transaction gets posted or if a new order gets booked. And our sales and marketing efficiency ratio is going to get updated in real time. And I can drill down to the underlying detail for sales and marketing expense and then evaluate any of those transactions, or the underlying detail for all of my new business orders during that period. So again, scorecards are one of my favorite things in the system. They're extremely powerful. This scorecard in particular comes out of the box as part of our contract renewals module. These are the same metrics that we at NetSuite use, so these are already configured for you. However, you can create as many of these scorecards as you want. So in that vein, I just wanted to point out that even though we've been looking at the home dashboard this whole time, you don't have to feel like you have to shove everything on your home dashboard, because every tab at the top of the screen here that has drop-down navigation has its own dashboard as well. So on my customers dashboard, I could have all of my customer lists with all of my overdue invoice amounts, and I can easily filter this at a global view or by subsidiary. I can also have links to all my customer-related transactions. On my fixed asset tab, I can have a dashboard devoted to fixed assets. We're not going to talk about fixed assets too much today, but here I'm looking at all my assets. I can see the original cost, the total net book value, and I can filter this by subsidiary, by asset type, by location or office location, and filter that list down. This is another example of a saved search being used as a list on my dashboard. From here, I can drill into any of these particular records and view anything that I want about this asset. We're not going to talk too much about assets today, but I can see the purchase order that this was bought on, the vendor bill that this was bought on, and I could open those transactions from here as well. I can view the depreciation history and drill into any of the depreciation journal entries that I've made. Mind you, all this detail is from drilling down dynamically from the dashboards. And then my statistical analysis tab, I can have a whole entire page of scorecards. So for instance, the current ratio, if any of these metrics get changed, they will update in real time, and my current ratio will update in real time. So, NetSuite's extremely dynamic, and every one of these dashboards, you can drill down to the underlying detail, and every one of these tabs at the top has its own dashboard. So real quick, I just want to drill down into here real quick, because it's going to take me to a sales order by customer summary report. And we're viewing this, again, in a consolidated view. But if I just wanted to view my sales orders for the German subsidiary, I could easily change my subsidiary at the bottom and view my German sales orders in euros. Or if I wanted to view all my orders in EMEA in a consolidated view, I could view all of my sales orders for EMEA, and I could break out my subsidiary at the column level. And now I'm viewing sales orders by subsidiary in the EMEA subsidiary in British pounds, which is the base currency of EMEA. Or I could come all the way up to the top and look at that sort of overall consolidated view of all my orders in the base currency of my headquarters, which is USD. And we're going to talk about currencies in just a second. But from here, and any report, I can drill into any of these, these figures and get the underlying details. So here we have all the transactions for Abbott Technology, and now I'm down to the transaction level or to the sales order for this particular transaction. Now, we're going to talk a lot about sales orders in just a second. Really, the point that I wanted to get across is from that high-level metric, we drilled into a report. We're now at the transaction level, and this transaction is going to be related to any other possible transaction that ties to it. So we're looking at a sales order, but what we see in software a lot of times is that software companies resell hardware. So we have full drop ship capabilities, and this order is going to be dynamically linked to the purchase order that got created to buy this third-party server to ship to the customer. And that purchase order is then going to be related to the vendor bill that that vendor eventually sells and the fulfillment that that vendor sells. You'll also see that we're selling licenses and maintenance here, and those are going to be billed up front, where our services are going to be billed monthly time and materials based off of a project record. So in my related records tab, I can see my upfront billing as well as my time billing and any other transactions related to this particular sales order. So everything is dynamically linked to everything else, and everything is drillable down from reports and down from your dashboards. And then lastly, we've talked about all the related transactions that it ties to, but we can also drill down to the customer level, or customer 360 as we like to call it, because from this customer record, you are going to have visibility into every single thing that has to do with this customer. So for those of you on Salesforce, we're going to integrate this customer record with your account record in Salesforce. We have full CRM capabilities in here, so I can send emails from the customer record or, overdue customer statements, and those emails are going to be tied here right on the record. I can attach as many files as I want to this customer record as well. I can manage all of my install base. So this is a reseller. We have full channel management. So here we're looking at a reseller, and we have its entire install base across all end users. But if I just wanted to see the install base for a particular end user, I can easily filter this list just for a particular end user, and you can see the view dynamically changing as my install base expands. Of course, I can drill into any of these transactions directly from the record here. Same thing with contracts. We're going to talk about all this in a little bit, but I can view my contract information and related contract values rolling up directly from the contract records to the customer record, filterable by any number of filters. Again, these are examples of saved searches. We're searching the database for certain information and displaying it on the customer record. My sales tab, I can view every transaction that this customer has ever purchased. So we're looking at new business sales orders right now. Again, I could filter this if I wanted to by end user. Or if I wanted to look at just invoices in more of sort of an AR, AP view for this customer, I could change the view. And now I'm only looking at invoice and payment information for this customer. Same list, different view, different information being focused. And, of course, I can drill into any of these transactions. Projects. We talked about project management. We're not going to talk about it too much, but I can have all my projects, percent complete information, the type of billing. I can view the project records right here from this dashboard and then view any sort of information on that project record that I would want to see. And then lastly, the only other thing I want to show before we move on to demos on the financial tab. So we can have multiple currency customers. We are PCI compliant, so we can store credit card information in encrypted state. We can store ACH and EFT information at the customer level. And we have mini AR aging right here on the customer record, as well as information around overdue balances, unbilled orders. So, if all else fails, you don't have to go to an aging to view where the customer is at from a financial perspective. So that's really the end of sort of my overview, as I want to call it. We talked about navigation, such as shortcuts, recent records, global search. We talked about saved searches and reporting and the dynamic nature of all of the things on our dashboards and reports. And then we talked a little bit about how, everything rolls back and is connected to the transactions and the customer records, all dynamically linked together. So with that, I want to move on with the demo. So I'm going to open my slide again, and we're just going to go through a couple slides. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on lead to order in the actual product today. I'm just going to show a couple of slides. But as I mentioned, NetSuite is a full-service CRM. We have opportunity management, prospect management, all of what we use NetSuite internally for this. We have sales forecasting, everything you would expect from a CRM and Salesforce automation perspective, we have in NetSuite, and there's a lot of benefit of, having everything in the same system as finance. That being said, in the software vertical, we understand that most of you are on Salesforce already. And we're not going to try to pull you off Salesforce, but what we are going to do is allow you to integrate with Salesforce. We have really flexible open APIs. They have really flexible open APIs. And we have some really great connectors between NetSuite and Salesforce. There's bidirectional synchronization in real time between account and customer records, between opportunities in Salesforce and quotes, sales orders in NetSuite. We're going to sync all of the financial information that gets created in NetSuite back into Salesforce to get your sales reps the back office visibility directly in their Salesforce accounts, as well as syncing things like renewal opportunities back into Salesforce when they're automatically created so that your sales reps can timely renew their customers, and you can prevent things like revenue leakage and stuff like that from missing the renewal date. So, from a lead to order perspective, whether you're on Salesforce or whether you're looking to move on to an automated system, we have you covered really in both areas. Now, from an order to cash standpoint, once that sales order is created, whether you're going to be creating it, building it up through our Salesforce automation tool, or whether it's going to come over from Salesforce as a sales order, it's going to go through some approval process, and that could be multiple levels of approvals. It's really up to you. But on that sales order, we're going to have billing schedules. So some of you might be bill completely up front, but we see a lot of different types of billing across our customer base. So at the sales order line level, you can have all sorts of different billing schedules, and we can also drive things like time and materials billing, milestone billing from project records in our PSA tool. Then there's a fulfillment step. That's optional. You don't have to use fulfillment. If you're shipping goods, whether it be hardware or an appliance, you're going to want to use fulfillment, and we integrate with all the major shipping companies, UPS, USPS, FedEx, etc. We can also use fulfillment to drive things like the electronic delivery of license keys. So fulfillment's an optional step, but we do see a lot of our software customers using it regardless of whether they're fulfilling finished goods or not. And then invoices are going to get created from the billing schedules on the sales order, and they're going to post to deferred revenue typically, at least in a software company environment. Now, tying that in with revenue recognition, and it is, for us, we look at these things as very much linked. Also on the order is going to be revenue recognition schedules, okay? And we have all sorts of schedules. We can do percent complete. We can do straight line. We have a lot of options about how you recognize your revenue. And we also have the ability to contain, fair market value prices at the item level so that we can recognize revenue based off of the relative fair value, or VSOE, instead of the sales price. What's going to happen is a revenue commitment, or a revenue contract as I like to call it, gets created from the order, and that is basically a single location to manage all of your RevRec schedules for an order. All right, so even if you've got multiple invoices for a contract, you have one single place to manage your revenue. And then after the order's approved, we've committed the revenue, we fulfilled everything, we maybe sent out one or multiple invoices, it's really just a matter of recognizing revenue. So once a month, whoever's job it is to recognize revenue is going to have a reminder that you have RevRec entries to create, and you're going to push a button, and you're going to be able to recognize all your revenue across all your contracts at one time in a fully automated fashion. All of these pieces are going to be dynamically linked to each other and all tied together through reports. Additionally, there's a deferred revenue reclassification step that's also automated, one click. I'm not going to get into it today, but things like unbilled AR, if you recognize revenue in advance of billing, we're going to automate the reclass from deferred to unbilled. If you sell in foreign currencies and there's foreign currency fluctuations to your deferred revenue balances, we're going to be able to reclassify those deferred revenue balances based off of foreign currency changes. So very powerful, lots of functionality. And before we move into the product, if you're on this call, you've likely heard about the new RevRec standard, ASU 2014-09. And, you're going to be happy to know that we are working very, very closely with consultants, one of whom is actually on the Transition Resource Board, to make sure that we are on top of the new standard. And the fact remains that we are. So, with the new standard, everything's going to be moving more towards a relative fair value, away from the residual method and the dual allocation method. And we do support that out of the box today. We also support the residual method. We also support the dual allocation method, and I'm going to show you a little bit of each of those as we go. But regardless of the fact that we support this today, we are making major investments in revenue recognition, and we plan on releasing a lot of really great new functionality over the next several releases. So that being said, I want to keep moving on, and let's jump into the product. So I'm just going to switch roles here. And when we go into this role, again, in real life, when you go through the order approval process, the billing process, the fulfillment process, all of those steps could be done by different people. Now, today, for the sake of time, I am going to be running all of those steps from one role and just kind of triggering each step from the transaction. But what I do want to point out is, reminders like sales orders to approve, sales orders to bill, sales orders to fulfill. If that order comes over from Salesforce.com and it's your turn to approve it, you're going to get a reminder in an email that says you have an order to approve. I can come into a screen like this where I can mark all of my orders, or I could open up any of the orders and then approve them at the transaction level. Once that order is approved, if there's a billing schedule on it and I'm responsible for billing, I'm going to be able to come into a page like this, say I want to see all invoices scheduled before 2/28/2015, and I'm going to be able to see all of my invoices scheduled before 2015. I'm going to be able to mark all if I just want to fire out the whole invoice run, or I could open up any of these invoices individually and bill them. Same thing with fulfillment. So, these are all steps that I'm going to allude to, and we're going to do sort of at the transaction level. But again, you can fulfill in bulk across your customers or fulfill at the individual transaction level. All these steps could be done by different people. All these steps can be workflow driven, and all of these can be accomplished very, very quickly. But it doesn't really teach you much about the product if I'm just going to pages and mass approving things. So I want to spend a little bit more time with you and talk about some of the different things on this transaction. So first off, if we're talking, this is a sales order. It's in an unapproved status. And in this particular sales order, it's a 3-year contract. We're selling some SaaS licenses, billed annually, and then some implementation services billed up front. So before we talk about everything at the line level, first, let's talk about the actual products that you sell. So in NetSuite, we call those items, and you're going to be able to see them listed here. And we can pop open the item record real quick, and we can just take a look at an item record and see some of the things that we have from a product standpoint. For one, there's going to be a lot of different header information, what we want to name the license or the item, what we want to call it, to our customers. We can set up, units types, what kind of unit we're selling these items in. Notice at the bottom, we can have multiple list prices for each item based off of price levels. So maybe your partners get a different price, or maybe you've got a certain priority rate that gets a different price. We also have quantity-based pricing. So you can have price breaks built into your item master for quantity-based pricing and price levels. Also on the product or item record, we're going to have things like income account that you want this to post to, deferred revenue account that you want this to post to, and any of your fair value for revenue recognition. So you can see here we have our estimated selling prices. We've got the thresholds that we'd accept before we use the estimated selling prices, and we can have multiple estimated selling prices by dimension. So different business unit might get a different estimated selling price than another business unit. So all of that is tracked at the item level to help us automate, sort of the order to cash and rev rec process. So that's what we're selling. Additionally, who are we selling to? So we're selling, in this case, we're selling to a reseller and an end user, and we're going to bill to the reseller and ship to the end user. So we do have full channel management in NetSuite, where we can also have distributor level if you want to as well, and bill and ship to different customer tiers. Okay, so you see in this case we have a 36-month contract. We're going to renew it for 12 months. We're linked to the contract record here, so I'm going to show you some slides on the contract record in just a minute, but this is a record that gets created in the background off of a sales order, and that's going to manage your install base and automate your renewal process. And you can see down here what we're selling. So we're selling SaaS licenses and services, 10 users of each license or SaaS license and 100 hours of services. We've got our list prices per unit per year and our total gross amount. We can have all sorts of discounting. We can discount at the header level, at the line level, until we finally come to our sales price. So this is what we're selling it for. We're billing our SaaS licenses annually over the 3-year contract and our services up front. And that's kind of where we're at from a pricing and billing perspective. From a RevRec perspective, we have our RevRec schedules. Now, for the services, again, we have a lot of customers doing percent complete or milestone, whatever it may be, we can support it. I wanted to keep it simple and just recognize these all using sort of exact days of the month. But you can see we have different terms. So what we see oftentimes is that you're going to recognize your licenses over your contract term, but your services over your estimate or average customer lifetime. So, we can have different billing at the line, we can have different schedules at the line, and we can have different RevRec terms at the line. And then finally, we have our relative fair value allocation that's occurring on the right side of the screen. So even though we're selling these items for $57,600, $36,000, and $37,500 respectively, our calculated fair value is actually $72,000, and our allocation amount is $57,281. Our calculated amount is $36,000. Our allocation amount is $28,600, and our calculated amount here is $50,000, and our allocation amount is $39,700. So, we have the ability to recognize a completely different amount than what we're selling it for. So, before I move on, and we're going to actually take this order and go all the way through billing and through revenue commitment and through RevRec, I just wanted to point out a couple different business models that we're not going to spend as much time on, but I know some of you are looking at this and saying that's not what we do, so I'm not going to be able to cover every use case, but I want to talk about a couple other scenarios, at least at the order level. So what we're looking at here is a bit different than what we just saw, where we have perpetual license, we have 2 maintenance SKUs that tie to different products or different perpetual licenses, and then we have software, or we have professional services. In this case, we are going to recognize all of our licenses and all of our services based off of percentage completion of the project record. So just because we don't only have the ability to recognize services percent complete, we can also drive percent complete recognition for the software license from a project record. You'll also notice that in this case, we're using the residual method. So instead of using the relative fair value, we're recognizing the maintenance, which we're selling for $0, for its VSOE price is $24. We're recognizing this maintenance, which we're giving away for free, at its VSOE price of $12, and we're carving out the difference. We're carving out the difference between the VSOE and the sales price of all the undelivered items from the software licenses. So even though we're selling this for $120, we're only recognizing this for $91,000. So that's an example of a residual method calculation using a project record to drive percent complete RevRec for both the licenses and the services. And then one last example that you might have is using the dual allocation. So a lot of times when we have software companies that have a hardware component, they have to do a relative fair value calculation first, and then a secondary residual method calculation for the undelivered software items. And what you can see here is that in this allocation type, we can distinguish what pieces of the RevRec bundle are the software items, and we can do that secondary residual method carve-out. So even though all of these other items are being recognized at the relative fair value calculation, we're then doing a secondary residual method carve-out from the software license to meet the needs of the dual allocation method. So, that's really 3 of many examples, kind of showing the 3 major allocation types. And then again, if you're on this call and you're like, man, we don't do any of that, that's way more complex than what we do, that's okay too. You don't actually have to use the reallocation of revenue features. If you just want to have schedules, you can have schedules as well, and you can just recognize whatever you're selling for the sales price. So that being said, I want to go back to our original example and sort of take you through a soup to nuts process with this particular order. So just as a reminder, I wanted to just pull this slide up. We've got our order. We're going to approve it. Then we're going to look at some reports. We're going to commit the revenue, which will have no duplicate entry. Then we're going to bill the first invoice of the annual billing, and we're going to then recognize the revenue, tying it into all the reports sort of as we go along. So I'm just going to go ahead and press the approve button. So these are things that I showed you earlier can be done in bulk, but we can also do them at the transaction level so long as the so long as you have the permission to do so. And while that's approving, I'm going to open up just a couple of reports. And now that it's approved, we can look at the billing tab. So notice there's going to be tabs on every transaction. These tabs are also configurable. All the fields you see here are configurable. The forms are configurable. But on the billing tab, I can very easily see my billing schedule. So we're billing the services and the first year of my subscription up front, and then annually the second and third year of my subscription. Now, in real time, I've already updated my sales order billing forecast. So this is a waterfall report of all my forecasted invoices at the order level. So here's my upfront invoice in January of 2015, and here's my annual invoices in January 2016 and January 2017. Also my billing and revenue summary. This is one of my favorite reports, and what this does is this ties out everything related to this order from a financial perspective in real time. So what you can see here is we've approved our order for 127.5. We haven't billed any of the order, so our billings backlog is at 127.5. Now, we haven't created that revenue commitment yet, so we haven't scheduled any revenue, we haven't recognized any revenue, we don't have any revenue backlog, and we have no deferred revenue. And I'm going to keep coming back to this report because as we go through these steps, this is going to continue to update in real time. So going back to the order, you'll see I've got some buttons at the top for next bill and commit revenue. Again, these could be done in bulk by a different role, but I'm just going to go ahead and commit revenue, and there's going to be no duplicate reentry. All of the information from the sales order is going to be carried over to the revenue commitment. Of course, I could edit this revenue commitment if I wanted to. Also, notice the hold revenue checkbox here. Now, I'm not holding any of the revenue, but a lot of you have contingencies where you can't start recognizing revenue until maybe some contingency happens. We have the ability to put revenue on hold. You can still forecast that revenue, but you can't recognize anything until it comes off hold. And then you'll have the ability, via the Manage Revenue Recognition page, to take the revenue off hold and catch it up in a particular period, or I could change the start and end date, or reforecast out the revenue when I take it off hold. So I wanted to just touch on the hold revenue feature, even though we're not going to be doing too much of it today. But my revenue commitment's already been created, no duplicate reentry, and I can now see the revenue that's been scheduled for each one of these lines on my RevRec schedules. Okay? So there's the first item, there's the second item, and this is going to keep track of everything that's been recognized, everything that needs to be recognized, and it's going to be updated when revenue is recognized. So we've approved our order, and we've now committed the revenue. If I refresh this port, you can see now that I still haven't billed anything, so my billings backlog is still 125.7, but I've now scheduled all my revenue. I have a revenue backlog of 125.7, and I have zero in deferred revenue because I haven't billed anything yet. Also, now that we've scheduled that revenue, I can take a look at my RevRec forecast, or otherwise known as my revenue recognition waterfall report. So this is something that most all of you have in some way or another, most likely keeping it in Excel. But this is a real-time and dynamic report of all of your revenue schedules. Now, I like to demo this from a very detailed level. I could very easily summarize this report at a much higher level or expand it to more detail. And I can also customize this report quite easily, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But now that we've scheduled the revenue, we can forecast it all out, and we have our SaaS licenses going out for 3 years and our implementation actually going out for 5 years. All right, so we've now committed the revenue, we've approved the order, we committed the revenue. The only thing left really before we start recognizing revenue is to bill it. So I'm just going to open up that sales order again and press Next Bill. And again, no duplicate reentry. Because we have billing schedules on here, the billing schedule knows exactly how to create the invoice. It's going to pull all the information from the sales order and create that invoice. And again, I'm doing this for the purposes of example at the transaction level. In reality, you're going to have somebody who's responsible for billing go into a page and create your whole billing run from one easy-to-use interface. And then there's also, here's my quarterly invoice that's been, or my annual invoice, but my 100% upfront for the services. And we can have automatic preferences to email the invoice, or we can go ahead and save and print the invoice. Now, this is not a very fancy invoice, but we have full PDF layout capabilities, HTML layout capabilities, so you can really make your invoices have the look and the feel that you want it to have. And while that's getting created, I just wanted to come back to my reports, because when that invoice posts, that's the first GL impact posting that we've had in the whole entire system. So there's the invoice that you can see, very simple but also highly configurable. And when we go back to the billing and revenue summary now and just press refresh, you can see we now have deferred revenue. We billed 6689. Our billings backlog has decreased. Our deferred revenue has increased, but we still haven't recognized any revenue. So that's really the three major steps that we had here. We started with an order. We approved the order. We then committed the revenue. There was no duplicate reentry. It created all the schedules. We then drove our first of 3 invoices, which was the first thing that posted to the GL. We could go ahead and accept payment at the invoice level, or have our AR specialist accept payment through the accept payment feature. And we've watched how all of our reports have updated in real time as we've triggered all these different steps. Okay? And now that's really the end of the process. We don't bill that again for another year. And whoever's responsible for recognizing revenue is going to have a reminder that they have revenue recognition entries pending. So they're going to be able to come in here once a month and basically create revenue recognition entries for their whole entire company with one click of the button. I press Mark All, create RevRec journal entries, and they'll all be created. Now, for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to actually filter this to just one customer so we can really focus on the use case that we're focusing on. And what you're going to see is, here is my revenue commitment that I just created, and I'm going to go ahead and check those boxes and press Create Journal Entry. And I actually think I want to do this for January. Mark All, Create Journal Entry, and in real time, it's now created a journal entry, taking that out of deferred revenue and booking it into revenue. So we can drill back to the journal entry that was created. And here we can see our licenses and our services, recognizing revenue, pulling it out of deferred revenue. If we go to our revenue commitment and we look at these schedules and we just press refresh, you can see that on the schedules now, it's dynamically linked back to that journal entry, and it shows as executed. So all this process is tied together and dynamically linked to one another. And at the top here, we can see what's remaining to be recognized, what's been recognized, and what the total amount was. So every time we recognize a month of revenue, this schedule will update until it's been completely recognized. All right. Additionally, from our billing and revenue forecast, if we refresh this forecast, you can now see we've got recognized revenue. So we booked 127.5. We billed 66.9. Our backlog is 58.8. We scheduled on the rev commitment 125.7. We've recognized 31.05. Our to be recognized based off of what's scheduled was 122.594, and our total deferred revenue is 63.794, which is the total amount that was billed less the amount that was recognized. And then every month you would continue to recognize revenue until the whole contract has been recognized, and this would basically all have 0 remaining to recognize, 0 in deferred, and 0 left to bill. And it's kind of weird demoing to people that I'm not talking or interacting with, because I have no idea if you have any questions or if you're confused or if you're on it. But hopefully you are able to follow that. We basically, talked about how the whole order-to-cash process is automated via workflow and reminders. We showed how item records contain a lot of crucial information that will drive the allocation of relative fair value as well as the pricing. I showed you about reseller management. We talked about several different RevRec use cases and schedules, whether it's using the relative fair value or the residual method and percent complete, or using the dual allocation method for hardware and software. And then we went through a soup to nuts example, really tying it back to all these reports as we went. And that pretty much takes me to the end of this section. It's by far the fastest I've ever demoed that section, so I really hope that you all on the call followed that. But before we move on, I just wanted to talk about this report because I like this report, and it gives me a good opportunity to talk about reporting in general. So we have over 200 standard reports, and all reports can be exported to Excel, CSV, or PDF. And when you do export to Excel, it's going to carry over the formatting of the report as well as all the formulas. So you can see this is not just a data dump. All the formulas are up in the top here, so you can actually export a very actionable report directly from NetSuite. Okay, we can also schedule reports to be run on some sort of recurring schedule and emailed to somebody that doesn't have NetSuite. Okay, so if you have a board that needs to see a particular report, you can have a scheduled report run and emailed to them. Again, we can also just email a report directly. So if I'm looking at this report and I just need to fire it to somebody, I can just press email and fire it out. And then, as I showed you earlier, we can collapse and expand reports quite easily. But the key really is the ability to customize a report. So we have all these great reports, but you are going to be able to make exponential versions of that report as you customize these reports. So whether it's a custom field that you create that you want to bring into a report or a field that already exists, all we have to do is press Customize, and we can really change the look and feel of this report. So let's say that instead of a RevRec forecast by customer, we want a RevRec forecast by product line. All right, so I can change the name of this report, search for the product line field, and the system will find the product line field, which I can then add as a column to the report. So I'm going to add this as a column to the report. And then let's say that I want to group the entire report by product line. So I want to see my whole RevRec forecast by product line. So I'm going to move it to the left, group it by product line, and then I'm also going to give it a filter. So let's say, so I can view the entire report with all product lines or for one specific product line. So I'm going to add it to a filter as a multi-select. I don't actually think that I added it. So I'm going to add it as a filter as a multi-select where I can easily filter between my product lines on this report. So we took that old report, we created a brand new report. I'm going to press Save As because it's not going to override the report I just looked at. It's going to be a brand new report. Now we're grouped by product line. So if I collapse this, you can see my whole forecast is grouped by product line. And we can break this out by accounting period to see it in the waterfall version as well. Okay. Now, also, we added a filter for product line. So I can now see this filter. So if I only want to look at on demand, I can select on demand. And now I'm only looking at on demand, and if I collapse that, it's a lot easier to see that I'm only looking at on demand, and or I can go deeper into different levels. I could do a multi-select where I'm only looking at on demand and on-premise B and press OK, and now I'm only getting two product lines. So we took the report that I was using, we added product line, we grouped it by product line, we added product line as a filter, and then we can do anything. We have a brand new report. I could add this report to my shortcuts so it's easily accessible. I also wanted to point out things like RevRec schedule status. So we mentioned earlier that we can put schedules on hold. And maybe, for you it's really important to manage all of your RevRec schedules that are on hold because, to make sure that you're not recognizing revenue before you should be able to, or that you can start recognizing revenue when some contingency is met. So I can easily filter this report by my revenue status. So if I only want to look at revenue on hold, now I'm only looking at my revenue on hold, and I won't be able to recognize any of this revenue. Or I can only look at revenue that's not started or in progress, and now I'm viewing only RevRec schedules that are not started or in progress. And then I could take that one step further and look at only RevRec schedules that are not started or in progress in product line on demand. All right, so that's just a little intro to how flexible our reporting is, how configurable our reporting is. And I can also, this is everything that's forecasted. If I only wanted to see what's been recognized, I can press is recognized and get a backwards looking recognized revenue forecast as well. So that really brings me to the end of sort of our order to cash process. We talked about, Salesforce automation and integration to Salesforce. We talked about billing schedules, rev rec schedules, revenue commitments, revenue reallocation, and then finally a bunch of different reports that tie revenue and billing together, and then some additional functionality around customizing reports and changing around the functionality reports. So I'm really trying to cram, I just closed my NetSuite account. So I'm really trying to cram a lot of information into this demo, but hopefully it's been useful. So I'm going to have to log back in here, and while I do that, I'm going to find my next slide. So because of the lack of time, I'm not going to show a lot around contract management in the product today, but I did decide to take some really great screenshots to give you an overall feel of our our contract management capabilities. So I just want to walk through those screenshots before we get into global finance. So through our contract module, you just saw how we took a brand new order, approved that order, and went through all of the billing and revenue steps. But I also pointed out that contract ID. And with NetSuite, there's going to be a background process that's going to create a contract. Now, that's not a GL posting record. That contract basically contains all of your entitlements for that particular contract. So it takes all the information from the sales order and all of these pre-configured preferences and item level settings to create your contract record. Now, we also have upsell and downsell management. So if 6 months later you have an upsell or you have a return for one particular contract, all of that's going to get combined on one contract, and then eventually when there's a renewal is due, whether it's 60, 90, 120 days, whatever you set, that renewal transaction is going to get created automatically, and that can be an opportunity, that could be an estimate, or that could just be an order. And that opportunity, estimate, or order is going to show up on the dashboard of whoever is responsible for renewing. So whether that's a renewals manager or whether that's a specific sales rep, it will get routed to them. They're going to see they have an opportunity to renew, and that opportunity is going to already be created. It's also going to combine like items for all of your upsells and downsells onto the renewal contract. This also can be synced into Salesforce, and it can be amended too if you want to do upsells on the renewal, etc. And then eventually that will create its own contract. You can upsell or have returns to the renewal, and this will go until they cease becoming a customer. So just a couple of slides. I showed you this already, but we're looking at a sales order here. We're going to have contract information on the order, and it's going to be linked to that contract record. This is an example of that contract record. This contract record is going to have things like annual contract value, renewal value, annual renewal value, current contract value, as well as the entitlements tab, which is going to have all of the contract items. So our hardware item, our software item, and any of the renewal items and the term, as well as their statuses. We can also import license key information from a license key generator and store them here on the contract record as well at the line level. Okay? When it gets renewed, this is also going to be renewed to the renewal transaction when it gets created. So this is dynamically tied back to the order, dynamically tied back to the customer. So this is a screenshot of the customer record, and I already showed you this before, but on the install base tab of the customer record, we're going to have visibility into the entire install base, what those items are, what their start and end date is, what their status is, and of course license key information if there is any license keys. When it gets renewed, all of that renewal is going to happen automatically and linked back to the contract, linked to the customer, linked to the sales transactions. And here's what that renewal order looks like. So if you recall in that original sales order I showed you, we had a sales order for hardware, hardware maintenance, software, and software maintenance. And that renewal contract is going to be just for the hardware maintenance and just for the software maintenance. We can have built-in uplift rules. This renewal transaction is going to be dynamically linked to the contract by which created it, as well as any new contracts that it creates. So the whole process between contract creation, contract renewal is automated, and everything, just like with the order, billing, and RevRec, everything from the contract management creation is dynamically tied together for visibility across the whole process, drillable to from reports, drillable to from dashboards. And that is really what I wanted to show you around our contract management. Oh, last thing. This is another screenshot of that scorecard I showed you on my dashboard. This really comes out of the box with our contract management. I showed you those values on the contract record, things like renewal values, annual values, contract values. Well, a lot of those values are what's driving these metrics, and these metrics are all real time. If you create a new contract, if a new contract renews, if a new contract cancels, our churn metrics will be updated in real time. Our ARR metrics will be updated in real time. And I'll be able to drill down from any of these metrics to the underlying contracts and sales transactions that go into compiling these metrics. And finally, the last section of the demo today, global financial accounting and reporting. So, one of the biggest drivers of companies evaluating NetSuite for the first time, if they're maybe coming off of QuickBooks, is that they're looking to expand globally, and NetSuite's really going to be the most functional or the most flexible tool to allow you to do so. For companies coming off big legacy ERP, usually the problem is visibility across all your subsidiaries. So we really service both, the smaller companies coming off QuickBooks and the big companies coming off the legacy ERP, because we allow you to manage all of your subsidiaries in one unified database, via our NetSuite One World product. We also are going to bring in exchange rates every single day from a company called Morningstar, and we are going to use those exchange rates to keep a real-time consolidated exchange rate table right in the system. So what you'll see is our subsidiary hierarchy. We have an elimination sub. This is a very simple subsidiary hierarchy, and each subsidiary has its own base currency. So in real time, as I kind of showed you a little bit when we looked at our sales order forecast, I can view it, any report, whether it's financial or otherwise, in the base currency of a subsidiary, or in the base currency of any of its consolidated reporting entities. So Germany I can view in euros, I can also view in British pounds, and I can also view in USD. Now, creating a new subsidiary is simple as pressing new subsidiary, giving it a name, giving it some general information, and you can be sharing a global chart of accounts and operating in that subsidiary in literally minutes. If you buy a new company, you can use our import tool to import beginning balances, and you can be up and running much quicker than if you had to get them on some, on-premise system that needs servers installed, etc. So again, we have real-time consolidation. This is just a screenshot of a consolidated income statement. You also notice the eliminated sub. We have full intercompany management capabilities, intercompany journal entries, intercompany by sale transactions, intercompany transfers, and all of those get eliminated via the monthly close process through an elimination subsidiary. And you could have an elimination at every level of your consolidation, or you could just have one at the headquarters level. Here's a screenshot of the consolidated exchange rate table. So we are bringing in all the exchange rates every day. We always know what the current rate is. We always know what the historical rate is. And because we always know what you're transacting at, we can maintain an up-to-date average rate. So we always have this consolidated exchange rate table, and that's how we're able to give you consolidated reporting throughout the month in real time. Just a little bit about our consolidated exchange rates. So by default, balance sheet accounts are going to, or asset and liability accounts are going to use the current rate. The P&L is going to use the average rate, and equity transactions are going to use the historical rate. Although, as you see over on the right side of this screen, on the account record, if you want to override the default rate for whatever reason, you can do that. And then any translation values or reconciliation goes through our cumulative translation account between the different rates. And we are FASB 52 compliant. Now, even if you're not multi-subsidiary, which many of you on this call may not be, you still might be increasing your global footprint. You still might be purchasing from a foreign vendor, or you still might be selling to a foreign vendor. So even if you're not going to buy our One World product because you don't have multiple subsidiaries, you still have full access to the multi-currency functionality in NetSuite, regardless of whether you have multi-subsidiaries. So transactions are going to be booked to the GL at the daily or historical rate. So in this case, I have a vendor bill, out of the USA subsidiary, but it's a British vendor and it's in British pounds. And you can see the exchange rate between USD and British pounds on that day was 1.66 and change. So when this vendor bill posts to the GL in the USA, it's going to post to the GL at its translated amount, or at the daily exchange rate at 1.663. And that happens automatically. This exchange rate will get sourced in automatically, and it could also be overrode if you need to override it for whatever reason. Now, when this gets paid, when this bill gets paid, the exchange rate's changed here. Now, again, you could override this if your bank gives you a different exchange rate, but the payment is a couple days later. It's going to automatically post the realized gain loss, and that realized gain loss is going to roll up to a lot of great realized gain loss reporting that we have. Also, when we're talking about revaluation, say that bill that we just looked at wasn't paid by the end of the month. As part of the monthly close checklist, we're going to automatically revalue all your open foreign currency balances as of the current rate at the end of the month. It's going to automatically post an unrealized gain loss, and then it's going to automatically post the reversal of that unrealized gain loss in the prior period. And then as these open balances get paid down, realized gains loss will get posted, or it will keep getting revalued month after month at the current rate at the end of the month. And at the account record, you can select whether or not you want that account to be revalued. So it doesn't have to just be AR or AP. It can be intercompany accounts, cash accounts, whatever it may be. Also, we support indirect tax reporting in 54 countries right out of NetSuite. So we bring in all the tax codes from all these countries. Right at the transaction level, it'll calculate the VAT or GST payable, and it will roll up into the tax reports, which can be filed directly from NetSuite. And any of the purple countries means you can online file directly from NetSuite. The other companies, you can just file from NetSuite. We are also translated already into 19 countries. So in addition to being able to get you up and running quickly by creating a new subsidiary on the same database, by bringing in all your foreign currencies, we are already translated into these 19 languages. So if we have a subsidiary in Malaysia, as you expand and if you need this translated into other languages, we've got you covered there. And this slide is just to prove to you, we have a full electronic payment capability out of NetSuite, and a lot of the countries across the world require certain EFT formats. I don't know too much about this area, I'll be honest, but we have experts who do, and we support all of the required formats throughout the world. And then just a screenshot of the monthly close process. So every month you're going to come in and lock down the GL. There's a couple steps regarding the inventory, that if you have inventory that you would take those steps, creating any of your intercompany adjustments, the revaluation step, which is going to automatically create those revaluation records. This step is going to lock down the final consolidated exchange rate table. So as we mentioned, we have a real-time consolidated exchange rate table, but that is going to change throughout the month. The current rate is going to be different on the 25th than it was on the 11th. So as part of the monthly close, we lock down that final consolidated exchange rate table as of the end of the month. So for historical reporting, it's never going to change. And then we automatically eliminate any of your intercompany transactions. All right, so just a few more slides, and then we'll get back into the product. As far as the NetSuite GL structure, obviously we're going to be able to segment by subsidiary, by GL account. We can also have account categories like, travel expense or IT equipment that are mapped to accounts. We then have pre-built segments, department, class, location, which you can call whatever you want, and you can have sub-departments, subclasses, sub-locations. You can segment by item, customer, project, vendor, employee, and then you can create as many unlimited custom segments or dimensions that you want to create. Although we find that because our GL is so flexible with accounts, sub-accounts, and sub-departments, sub-locations, you really don't need too much more than what you're really seeing here, but you obviously have that option. And again, moving back to, we really allow our customers to streamline our chart of accounts because we have transaction line segmentation. So even though all these are pointing, we have expense categories pointing to a single expense account, we're segmenting this by the employee, by the subsidiary, by the customer, by the department, by the class, location. I could have different classes, different departments, different locations at the line level as well. And then just a slide on journal entries. I know this isn't a pretty slide, but when talking about the GL, how can you not talk about journal entries? And this is just a selection of all the different types of journal entries that we have, many of which we automate, as you can see here. So standard in a company can be created manually or can be imported. We can automatically reverse journal entries. We can automatically eliminate intercompany journal entries. I showed you the revenue recognition journal entries that are automated. I showed you the deferred revenue reclassification. Well, I didn't show you that actually, but if I would have showed you, it would have been automated. We can have memorized or recurring journal entries, statistical journal entries. So we have statistical accounts in NetSuite, and we can set up a schedule that can count or sum balances of other records in NetSuite and automate entries into a statistical account, which then can be used to dynamically allocate costs across departments or projects, whatever it may be. And that's a whole other conversation. We have automated amortization entries to amortize costs, deferred costs, or prepaid expenses. We automate the allocation process, so either using a statistical account balance to allocate or just a weighted average using percentages, we can take cost accounts or specific transactions or groupings of accounts and allocate it across departments, classes, locations, projects, customers, whatever it may be. And then we also can allocate across companies. So we have multi-subsidiary allocations and then all sorts of different fixed asset related functionality. I showed you earlier a fixed asset record and a fixed asset list, but we have all this really great, depreciation, asset transfers, automated everything, which we'd be happy to show you. So that's the end of my slide. You know what, before I move on, I just wanted to touch on this really quickly. I'm not going to be able to show it, but one of our great new features last year was our multi-book, where you actually have the ability to have multiple accounting books, so we can have different functional and base currency across books. We can have statutory reporting that's automatically posted in a statutory book, as well as different revenue recognition and expense management rules across books. So in this case, this is just a screenshot. Some of the different, you have one transaction, and based off of rules that you set up or account mappings that you create, we can have two versions of the truth or three versions of the truth, both in the primary GAAP book and then the statutory book or the IFRS book, or a different local currency book when your functional currency is different than your local currency. And this is just a screenshot showing how, on the left side we have our GAAP P&L, and on the right side we have a statutory chart of accounts for France. All of these are based off of the same data elements, the same transactions, but because we're using account mapping, we have multiple GL impacts across books. So it's really great functionality. Customers love it. I don't have time to show it today, but I just wanted to show a few screenshots. So I think I have, Kim, about 10, 13 more minutes, I think. So according to my stopwatch, I'll give you 10 more minutes. And so let's jump back in the product. So just going back to my sort of global controller role, I'm going to open up a bunch of screens from my shortcuts just in tabs so we can run through them real quickly. I'm going to open my subsidiaries list, my chart of accounts, my currency exchange rate table, my consolidated exchange rate table, my period close checklist. I'm going to open a VAT tax report, a realized gain loss report, and an unrealized gain loss report. And we're just going to cruise through these sort of in a NetSuite PowerPoint directly in the system. And I'll also open my income statement. So subsidiaries listing, this is going to look very similar because I took a screenshot of it and showed it in the slide, but it's just how I said it. And if you create a new subsidiary, it's as simple as really pressing your new subsidiary, giving it a parent consolidated reporting entity, giving it some general information, and it's going to by default share your global chart of accounts. Of course, you'll need to give permissions to any of your employees to do different, to have actual permission over this subsidiary, but from a setup structure, no system is going to get you operating in a new country faster than us. From a chart of accounts standpoint, we mentioned that by default, all of your subsidiaries are going to share a global chart of accounts, but you can restrict accounts to particular subsidiaries over here. I can restrict accounts to particular departments, classes, or locations, or I could have them apply overall. You can assign a sub-account or a parent account to an account. We have different account types: bank, accounts receivable, deferred revenue, accounts payable, and you can see where you set the default rate type, or whether it's a revaluation or an elimination account right at the account level. We'll close that. the currency exchange rate table. So this is going to capture all the rates every single day, and transactions will be valued or posted to the GL at their exchange rate when they're transacted in foreign currencies. And here's the consolidated exchange rate table. So, this is going to be tracking the current rate, the average rate, and the historical rate in real time throughout the period, which is going to allow you to get real-time visibility into all your reports from a consolidated view. And then the monthly close checklist. So we already mentioned the calculate consolidated exchange rate table. This is where you're going to lock down that table that we already just showed so that for historical purposes, everything stays the same. But you've got your steps where you lock down the GL, your inventory steps, any intercompany adjustments. This is going to automatically revalue your foreign currency balances, and we're going to automatically eliminate any of your intercompany transactions. Once the report is closed, you will not be able to change anything in there. If you do have the right permissions, you could reopen the period with a certain approval and certain documentation if you really, really needed to. Okay, so I want to just go into the income statement now. Right now we're viewing the income statement at a headquarters view broken out by subsidiary. I showed you this with that sales order report earlier, but I can very easily filter this and just view the Germany subsidiary in euros. I could view the EMEA subsidiary in British pounds, including the German subsidiary, which we just looked and we just saw in euros, now it's in pounds, all the way up to the headquarters consolidated view in US dollars. Now again, this is a consolidated view. The underlying detail is still being transacted in the individual currencies in the individual subsidiaries. So if I wanted to drill down into the transaction level detail for the United Kingdom, I could drill into my professional services fee, and now I'm looking at a vendor bill for $13,000 because we're still viewing this in the context of headquarters. If I change this to the United Kingdom, I could see what this bill is in the base currency of the UK, which is pounds. And then I could drill all the way down to the transaction level detail. And what I can see here is that this is actually, even though this bill is out of the United Kingdom, the bill is transacted in USD at an exchange rate of 0.66. So when we view the GL impact, or we view that last report, it's actually posting to the GL at 6,600, which is the $10,000 applied to the exchange rate. Now the other thing I wanted to point out is the VAT tax payable at the line level. I mentioned we've got full VAT and GST reporting. If we look at the GL impact, it's going to automatically post the VAT on purchases, and that is going to automatically roll up to our VAT tax report, which we can then submit online. All right, so we've got you covered from an international tax perspective. Now, lastly, what I wanted to show with this transaction, if we go back to the bill, we see the exchange rate was 0.66. If I go to my related transactions and open up the bill payment, I can see that the payment happened at 0.71, and that it automatically posted the realized gain and loss between the bill and the payment transaction. So there you can see a realized gain and loss of 600, which rolls up to our realized gain loss report. So this report is going to show anything that gave rise to a realized gain loss, the source exchange rate, the payment rate at the time that it was paid, and then the exchange rate, and we're looking at the realized gain loss, and this is in dollars because we're at a headquarters context. I could easily filter this report to United Kingdom context and see what that exchange or that realized gain loss was in pounds, which was 600. Okay, so automatically doing all of these things for you. These are things that I'm sure today is really a painful process. And then lastly, our unrealized exchange rate gain and losses. These are open foreign currency balances at the end of the month. You can see that we're revaluing them at the ending exchange rate of the current rate, and you can see that it's booking an unrealized gain loss and then reversing it in the previous period. And I can drill into any of these, see the revaluation records. I can see the GL impact posting the unrealized gain loss, and then seeing that GL impact automatically reversed and reversing that unrealized gain loss. And on these revaluation records, you can see all of the things that gave rise to an unrealized gain loss: open receivables, open payables, the transaction exchange rate, and then the ending exchange rate. So that's really what I wanted to show from a global sort of perspective. I have some other things to show just around the GL. Kim, I lost track of my time. Where are we at here?
Hey, Joe. I didn't want to interrupt you, but we are at kind of the half-hour mark, the 90-minute point, which is what we had allotted to our audience. We do have several questions that have come in. So, Joe, maybe we could just take one or two questions right now. For those of you, we are not going to be able to get to all the questions, unfortunately, but don't worry. We've captured your question, and we know that you asked it, and someone from NetSuite will absolutely be back in touch with you with an answer to your question. So, Joe, why don't we just do that, and we can take two questions that have come in that are pretty popular topics for folks, okay? Okay, the first question is, we have quite a few people on the phone who use Salesforce CRM, and they want to know if you can talk just a little bit more about how the two systems can be integrated with each other.
Yeah, sure. So, Salesforce has open APIs, we have open APIs, and via the connectors that we have to Salesforce, we have a bidirectional integration between, our products in NetSuite and the price book in Salesforce, as well as the account records and contact records in Salesforce and the customer and contact records in NetSuite. And then, as part of the connector, we actually add some custom objects to your Salesforce account. So we bring in a sales order object, an invoice object, and a payment object. So from Salesforce, the reps are able to select from the price book items that actually live in our item masters. They can select products, they can change the pricing, and then directly from Salesforce, they can press a button and create an estimate, which will come into NetSuite and create an estimate, or create a sales order, which will come into NetSuite, create a sales order, and bring back an actual sales order into Salesforce. And then as all the back office process occurs, which I showed you, we bill the sales order, we commit the revenue, we recognize revenue. That stuff actually won't be included, but the invoices, the fulfillment records, the payment records, all of that gets synced back into Salesforce. So, your sales reps never have to leave Salesforce. They have visibility into the products that they sell from NetSuite, as well as all the back office financial records from NetSuite. But NetSuite, is going to get all that, front office information, the customer information without having to duplicate it, the sales order information, the estimate information without having to rekey in any of that information. So if you engage with us in NetSuite, we'd be happy to give you a live demo of our Salesforce integration. Unfortunately, we just didn't have time today.
Okay, thanks, Joe. There are also quite a few questions around RevRec, and I think we can kind of consolidate this down into one question. Most of the people were saying, hey, listen, our revenue allocations are a little bit different than what you demoed. So can you just maybe recap the different approaches that can be supported for RevRec in NetSuite?
Yeah, so if you break RevRec down into a couple areas, we've got, we sort of have the allocations. We sort of have the pricing of fair value and the analyzing of prices, and then we also have the schedules, or the time and way that you recognize the allocated amounts across. So from an allocation perspective, we pretty much support the three major types, which is the residual method for where you're carving out the VSOE price for the undelivered items from the software that doesn't typically have VSOE, the relative fair value, where we're taking either estimated sales prices and we're reallocating all elements of the multi-element arrangement based off their relative fair value, and then we have sort of the dual allocation where we kind of do a relative fair value across the bundle, and then do a secondary residual method carve out for the maintenance items or the undelivered software items. So that's really what we support out of the box from an allocation perspective, but we have all sorts of different revenue recognition schedule types, whether it be variable revenue recognition or exact days or even periods or exact days prorating the first last month. We also have many different ways which you can come to fair value. So we can have multiple allocation prices based off of dimensions. We can have higher and lower thresholds. We can dynamically calculate estimated selling prices based off of what the other things that you purchase. So it really is a comprehensive solution to revenue recognition. And if you engage with us, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about exactly what you need, and we're going to be able to present you a solution that will meet those requirements.
Great. Thanks, Joe. And then one last question I will touch on because this came in quite a bit. People are asking if they'll get a recording of today's session. Absolutely. We will send out an email to everyone who registered for this webinar, including those of you who attended, with a link to the recording, and that you should expect to receive that email next week. Thank you again for joining us today. We know this was a lot of your time, and we appreciate your attention. And Joe, thank you for doing such a great job with the demo today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.